Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for once again joining us for Geocortex Show and Tell. This is week 2 of our 3-part series. Once again, I'm Lisa Cottrell, brand manager at VertiGIS, and want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to learn a little bit more about what our customers are doing with their Geocortex technology. A little bit of a preamble for you, some show and tell etiquette. What you're in for today are 3 15-minute presentations with 5 minutes for questions at the end of each. Please write your questions in the question box. Those questions will be moderated after each presentation ends by my colleague Shane Moore. Last week, we only had time to get to a few questions in the question box before moving to the next presenter. But if we do have time, you will be able to unmute yourself to ask further questions at the end of the webinar if you're able to stay on a little bit longer. If you can't, I will be going through and collecting the questions and sending them out to our presenters so they can answer your questions after our event concludes. And I'll also share our presenter emails in the chat window so you can reach out directly if you'd like. These webinars are being recorded, so if you have to jump off for any reason or maybe you can't make it next week, we will be packaging them up at the end of the 3rd in the series and emailing them out. So as long as you're registered, you will get an email connecting you to those recordings. And finally, we're always looking for volunteers to show their work, but we've received such good feedback about this series in particular. And if the situation with the global pandemic still prevents us from traveling in the fall, which it looks like it will, we'll most likely be holding another installation of our show and tell series. So please reach out to me. We always love to see what you're doing. We'd love to have you show your application to our other customers. So without further ado, we have 2 customers presenting today, both from the great state of Texas. We have Jeff Pope from Texas Boll Weevil Eradication Foundation, one of our longest standing customers doing cutting edge work with Geocortex Mobile. And then we have Aldo, Avina from Denton County, who has a great, what we call like kitchen sink Geocortex application that I think a lot of you on the line will be able to relate to because it's a lot of our organizations have similar applications at the government level, the local gov level. And then we have our CEO, Jon Brooks, Matt Valiant, one of our account managers, and Patrick Fingler from Technical Pre-Sales will be facilitating a 15-minute discussion about the impact of COVID-19 on the GIS department. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Jeff Pope and look forward to diving into Over to you, Jeff.
All right. Can you hear me now? You good?
Sure can.
Okay. Like she said, my name is Jeff Pope. I'm the Technology Director here at Texas Boll Weevil Eradication Foundation, and I'll get to that in a minute. I've been here for about 20 years. We started doing GIS work probably about the time we started our foundation, a little before I got here. We were established in 1993. We're a Texas foundation created just for the cotton farmers and the cotton production industry here. We oversee the Boll Weevil Eradication program. Boll weevils are just little insects that get inside a cotton boll and eat it and destroy it. It costs billions of dollars in revenue, and when the foundation was created, it was made to just monitor these, eradicate them the best way we can, being an invasive pest, and just keep it maintained for the production of a cotton within our state. We have 3 regions in our state, being a very large state, of course. We have about, I'd say, yeah, we have 3 regions. We have 4.8 million acres in the northern regions, probably about 7 to 8 million total throughout the state. We have eradicated the weevils completely in the northern part of the state, and right now our only biggest areas are down south around the Mexico border, and that's an ongoing thing. It just takes a little while. Oops, wrong way. I came on in about 2001, and our original system is a little barcode scanner that we use, and it just seemed very inefficient. We had no sort of mapping besides paper maps that we kept. I actually met with the GIS department at Texas A&M, and we discussed ArcIMS, and they introduced me to Geocortex, and that's when I first got introduced in 2006 with Rob Lenarchich. We are currently using, like I said, a hybrid. We use Essentials on our desktop, and we still use Essentials with the global mobile framework viewer for our iPads, and we're now moving into the GXM, the global, your new mobile viewer. A little history on us. Our data collection was originally collected, like I said, with a little barcode system on each trap, and you download these little scanners. They were kind of geolocated, but not quite. We had to take those scanners. We'd probably start at 4 in the morning before everything started to get going. The trappers would have to go out and scan everything with these little things, and they just really reference was a barcode. And like I said, it would start about 4 in the morning, and their day would end about 9 or 10 that night. The biggest problem is these little scanners had to be downloaded, so the data could potentially be lost. They'd have to go out and redo their information. And even after all this, we still had no way to look at visually where we trapped, where weevils were caught, and where our problem areas were. So we got introduced to Geocortex, and now we have a visual representation of all our traps, all our fields. We can overlay, our Texas Department of Agriculture sends us maps for certified cotton. We can overlay that in our system too. And that's another thing that they helped with, because the original ESRI product did not handle projections very well. We get things into different projections, and we'd have to do all sorts of manipulation to get them to lay over correctly. Essentials allowed us to just lay these over without care of the projections, and they just seem to work seamlessly. Worked with the development team time and time again to get this to work on a mobile framework with the iPad. Basically now they'll go out and they can find a trap just by georeferencing, walk up to that trap, and then inspect the trap by clicking on it, entering the information. And the little dots that you see, those are the traps. They'll change color based on what happened within that trap. If they caught a weevil, it would turn red. If there was a problem with the trap, they could change it. It would change to orange or whatever. But this would allow us to give a visual representation on a large scale where a supervisor could come up, look at a large map, and see where they had trapped, where they hadn't, where they caught weevils, where the problems were, etc. This made it a lot easier to maintain. And on top of this, with Essentials, we were actually able to take our geo event, which is linked to our GPS devices on our mist blowing equipment and treatment equipment, and then we could lay over the treatment maps and the aerial applications that were done on these fields. So the layering is what really sold us on this. As we moved along, we realized that the GMAF, the iPad framework, that works great, and it still works great, but it's cumbersome. It's tied to the operating system. It slows the system down. It uses a lot of memory. We have sort of some issues with it, not crashing, but just really slowing down because the operating system, if there's something else they're doing on the iPad, it can really limit it. So the GXM is a little more lightweight, a little more transparent, and we were able to duplicate just about everything on that by writing workflows to do what we needed to do. Our biggest problem out in the field, usually with trappers, is I'm not saying they look for ways to shortcut, but it's easy to pull up an iPad and say, oh, I inspected that trap, and never leave their truck. So we worked and got a workflow created that actually creates a geofence around the trap. They cannot actually do any details on those traps until they get close to it. We can set that range, 100, 300 feet or whatever. And I'm going to show you our little workflow that we made. It's very simple. Made a little geofence so we can adjust the feet parameter, etc., and actually assign which fields they can view and look at based on the workflow here. Let me go ahead and pop over to our GeoGo app. This is what we're looking at. This is down south. You can see already this is live. The gray are traps that are not inspected. The green are inspected. The red is a caught weevil. That's usually not a good thing, but that's what we use it for. And from there, we can tell who trapped it, who got it, etc. And I don't believe I can inspect these traps. I believe I'm too far away. Yeah, I'm literally way too far away. So that's the one thing I do love about the new mobile framework is it is very lightweight. And also, if I go back and make a change on the workflow and say I change the geofence, it's 100 feet's too close, I make it 300 feet. All I have to do is make the change in the workflow, tell them, they click I want to, refresh the app, boom, they're good to go. With the Essentials mobile app framework, it was actually built into a procedure. When I did that, they actually had to exit the app and get back in it for that to take effect. That's the biggest deal with that. This is developing a lot quicker than we thought it would. We should be able to go to the mobile framework hopefully by the end of the season, which our cotton season runs till around Christmas. And from there, we'll just probably transition out of the mobile app framework viewer and strictly onto this. And that was probably the quickest presentation I have ever done on this entire system. If there's any more questions about the essentials side of it, that's fine. I can do that too. But I know we're trying to concentrate on the mobile viewer, and that's where our focus is now also. So how quick was that?
That was like record time.
I tried to slam it all in there. So my apologies if I went too quick or skimmed over details.
No, Jeff, that's great. Shane, over to you. Do we have any questions for Jeff?
Hey, yeah, sure. We have one question right now from Michael Wallace. His question is, in relation to projections, are you using Portal and Arc Server to do the transformation, or do you just publish feature services to a geo server in the mobile projection?
We used to adjust them, but now we publish just the feature service. Like the maps we get from the FSA or the Farm Services Agency, a lot of their maps are in UTM projection, and we use the WGS projection. And like I said, we used to change it, but now we just publish it and let Essentials and the feature service take care of the overlaying of the projection. So no, we don't adjust any projections anymore.
Great. Another question here from Kelly Vlastos. The question is, I would love to hear about your Essentials work.
Oh, okay. As far as, let me bring that up. Yeah, the Essentials is where we really did a lot of work. I like Essentials for our desktop users, mainly because you can do a lot more information in it. You can add information and catalog it to where certain users can see certain overlays, certain users can't. And you can group, of course, features. I'm trying to figure out what to explain about it. I want to say the Essentials work is basically the same as the GXM mobile viewer work, as far as the workflows and all that information. Like I said, the only difference being you have to write it in a JS procedure to get a lot of the information that we want. But yeah, I'm trying to think of more Essentials items.
Kelly, you should be able to unmute yourself if there was something you specifically wanted to ask. Absolutely chime in. We have some extra time here for Jeff to get into something for you.
Please.
I was wondering about any pearls of wisdom you might have encountered with your Essentials work.
Pearls of wisdom. Ooh, let me think here. That's a great question. The Essentials work, I think the only pearls of wisdom I can say is we try to duplicate what we do as far as the user on the desktop, like a manager, as compared to the trapper, who's basically an hourly employee who goes out and deploys. We don't want him to see all these tools. We just want him to do what he does. So in Essentials, we actually created different Essentials sites for each one. Don't try to run it off the same site. I had a lot more difficulty doing that. It's much easier to run smaller individual sites and just publish those to certain users. Trying to think about the pearls of wisdom with Essentials. I really have not had any problems with Essentials that I can think of, or any hiccups. It can take just about any feature service you have. I've had no problem with ArcGIS procedures or maps. The best thing I think we like about it is the time enabled. If you have anything that has any historical data, that is a wonderful tool. I've got that set up here where you've got a time slider, and we treat by week. So we have 100,000 traps out in the state of Texas that we inspect weekly. And it's nice to pull up that slider, and you can go progress week by week and see where weevils were caught throughout the year. And the time-enabled layers on Essentials is a huge tool. That is a very nice thing to have. We can do the same with our spray overlays and things like that. You can see progression week to week to see where patterns might pop up. But yeah, Essentials, I can't think of any caveats or anything that's slowed me down on it. I've had nothing but positives.
Awesome. Okay, we have one last question from Marion Bishop. Her question is, how often are the traps inspected? Does the color go from green to non-expected color automatically?
We actually have a central system that we maintain in we store everything in our Oracle database. A lot of the traps we have, like you're seeing right now, this is in my area. These are every 2 weeks. As I go further south, those are every week. And we have actually triggers and resets that run on those that change them all back to the gray color when the week is over. Yeah, like see, these are not inspected. Everything will change to this gray down here at the end of the week. So yeah, it's just a trigger or procedure that we have run in the background that we just automatically run on the server, just a little SQL script, and boom, it resets everything.
Great. We do have a couple more minutes if anyone else would like to unmute themselves and ask Jeff
Please.
a question in real time.
Ooh.
I'll put you on the spot.
I don't like that. Yay.
Going once.
Come on, get me off the hook. Come on.
All right, if anyone has any other questions for Jeff, shared his email in the chat window below so you can throw him a line directly. And of course, if you have any questions about Geocortex Mobile specifically or any of the products, our team is here to help with that as well. So thank you so much, Jeff.
Please,
and
absolutely, anytime.
it's just such success you've had with your work, and it makes me happy every time you share it. So now we'll hand it over to Aldo at Denton County to share what their work there.
Thank you. Thanks for that presentation, Jeff. I'm Aldo Avina. I'm the GIS manager for Denton County, Texas. And we are located, let's see if I think I pulled up a map here. Just to give you some context, we're located north of Fort Worth in Dallas. We're the top point of what's called the Golden Triangle. And what we needed here at the county was a platform that would allow us to display our spatial information, as well as at the same time being able to enter in our development permits, our utility permits, and our culvert, our driveway permits. Trying to keep everything under one umbrella just to manage things a little bit easier. And we came across Geocortex. We've only been a customer for maybe like 6 months. So we're a lot newer than Jeff. And so this is kind of a new endeavor for us. And what we found them at the Esri user conference. So it was nice coming across them, and you know, we were going around seeking other platforms to see what everybody was doing, and Geocortex came up, and we just liked what we saw. There was a very clean look and feel to these to the application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click through 3 different applications. One of them being our official production permit site, and this one's internal only. And it's managed through our portal through SAML, so they'll use our Windows emails to log in. We've got our sandbox that we use to test out new functionality and features. It's basically a copy of the application I just showed you. And then finally, we have a public-facing site. So a lot of the work that happens on the internal side of things will get pushed out. The results get pushed out on our public-facing site, and that way folks can just view whatever it is they need to view or search for things they need to view. One thing that I'd like to point out as new users is that I appreciate how easy it is to have branding seamlessly across the different applications here. We're able to keep a template pretty easily. We're able to copy and paste sites, so we can just use the same layers without having to reconfigure anything. It's pretty nice to work with. So what I'll do first is I'll show you first the production site, and there's a lot of data here, and I wanted to leave it like this because this is how our users like to see things. We've got red dots for utility permits. We've got our floodplain panels in blue. They like to see the numbers. Right now we're using just a map, and we can switch it to imagery if necessary. And the reason we kept it like this, the Esri-based base maps, is to make loading a little bit quicker. As we zoom in, well, we start to see a lot more data, and our users, our end users, our planners like to see pretty much all the data on it at all times. So we were worried about things running slow, but it works pretty well. Now our red triangles here are our permits. Our black dots are our driveway permits, and then our stars are our 911 addresses. So there's a variety of operational layers happening at the same time. What I'll do is I'm going to click on a development permit here, and this is what we'll focus on today. Just to give you a little bit of sense, I don't know how other organizations, agencies track their building permits, but this is what the information that we give right at the beginning to our end users, which is property information, the permit number, as well as who purchased that permit. After that, this user can either view additional details, which pulls up the panel on the left. What they're able to do here is still see that little pop-up window that came up at the beginning, as well as more in-depth information about that particular permit. What we're able to do is we store the paper permits. This department still likes to work with paper applications. They'll scan the permit in it, and we'll save it in a server, and we're able to link to that server. And we'll see that the internal user, the planner, can access this as well as somebody from the public. This is public information, and so maybe they're able to access these records. Okay, so in order to enter in these different permits, Geocortex was able to build some tools for us. So what I'll do is I'll show you some of these tools. First, I'll show you the look and feel on the production side, and then I'll actually run a couple of these tools on the sandbox side. That way I don't give anybody a headache in the planning department. So the different options that we have is we can search for existing permits. We can create new permits, or we can create multiple new permits here. And what we liked is that we could not only create these tabs, but these groups here to kind of give a little bit more information to the users on what they can do or what they're searching to do, especially if they're not experienced in Geocortex. We wanted to create something easy for them to catch on to quick that served all their needs. So with that, I will zoom in into just a random area. Using the sandbox, and for the sandbox we had a brand new feature service, or it was a duplicate feature service that runs on its own, and we can do anything to it without affecting our production site. So what I'll do is I'll add one development permit. So the user clicks this button, they'll search for an R number, which I'll begin typing in here, and I'm just using my screen for reference. 91781. I'll click on there, and then it pulls up that parcel information. I'll hit select parcel, zooms into that parcel, drops a temporary permit, either on the centroid, or I can set it somewhere on the map, depending on where that building may actually exist, and I can create that permit. The workflow that Geocortex built for us grabs the parcel information from the parcel layer and automatically fills it into these fields, so the user doesn't have to do anything. And what the user has to do next is essentially fill these fields out that are provided to them on that paper form that I showed you earlier. Now, as this person types in their names, and I'll just fill in a few fields here. They can then upload the permit file or any other kind of documents they might have for this specific location, and they hit save. it gives me a confirmation if it's saved or if there was some kind of error, and it pops up right there, which is nice. They like to have that instant gratification of having that permit show up right away. And now, again, you'll see that information pop up here. If they needed to edit any more or add any more data into it, they can go in here. If it's under review, they can select who the reviewer is, and then they can change the status to approved or denied or withdrawn or whatever it is they need to do. So this is how they add one permit at a time. Next thing I'll show you is adding multiple development permits, which is, I think, pretty fun for me because I get to draw all over the place. What I'm going to do is add, instead of remove, you have the option to remove multiple permits, which is nice as well. I'm going to use a polygon to select this whole block. And this is relevant for, you know, a development coming in, a builder coming in and building in a whole new subdivision or a whole block of homes here. I'm going to hit add parcels, and I'm going to create. And, you know, it's the little things that are really satisfying. Is when I click, it has this little bubble that pops out, and it's those little things that really satisfy the end user. And when I select this block, it'll confirm the property numbers in this list, and you know the end user can cross-reference that as needed. Then I'll hit submit, and then here I'll say builder A, and their company is called We Like to Build Homes, and I'll set the permit status as pending. And what our end users like to do is they like to type in when they received versus when they approved the permit. And there are some validation checks. If the data approved comes in before the data received, it'll stop the permit process and say, hey, you should check on this. So now that I've had my parcel selected, I'm going to hit save. We'll see how long this takes. And it'll then give me a confirmation of the permits, the permit numbers that were generated using this process. And so what's nice is that as I click through each of these permits, it'll give me the builder name and any information that I submitted, and it's duplicated. And the only thing that's not duplicated is the permit number. And what I failed to mention is that we have a permit counter, and what the workflow does is that it increases that counter by 1. That way the end user does not have to fill in that permit ID. And so we change it every year. So we have an easy way to keep track of, aside from the date, we can keep track of these permits by year by the first 4 digits. Now with the last few minutes, what I will do is then show you what the end user sees. So they would access this public site, which not only has the planning department layers here, but also has a whole slew of other layers that they can search for. But they'll go up to the toolbar. They can use the search button here, search button, and then they can look for a development permit. I'll just type in some random number. And this is our production numbers, and so this is what actual permits that exist in real life. So the public user could then view a public permit, a development permit application form. They could search for roads. Let's say they live in a county, and this is we build these applications for the folks in the county. They can figure out if they live on a road that is county maintained, and that way they can submit some kind of complaint to that department or give them notice that the road is washed out. And so once I was able to see how they built their workflows in the permit app, I was able to use that as a template to build our own forms here. And there's a lot of nice tools that go beyond just the permit application. You know, I can search for these permits, but I can also do things like I built this workflow that allows me to use Google Maps, and our planners like to use this to see if you know, the address is correct, if the street name is correct when there's a 911 question, and it can launch them to an external website. I could also link with our pictometry information, And for that, I'm going to zoom out real quick, and I'll zoom into our county courthouse. I can remember really quickly where it's located. So I'll put it here, and the console is in the way. I'm going to have to move it for a second. Hopefully it zooms back in. The console's in the way, but it's all right. It's all right. It pulls up the pictometry data, and I can zoom in and out. And it's just nice that that's an easy. I don't know JavaScript. I don't know HTML or any of those programming languages, but I was able to just pick up using their community forums and some of their tutorials or their or other workflows that they built to create some custom ones for ourselves. And we do plan, because we're new customers, we haven't taken their trainings yet, but we do plan to do that in future. Just, we haven't used the apps that Jeff Pope demonstrated, so we're eager to try out new things. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Geocortex team for any questions.
Great, Shane, over to you.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Aldo. Yeah, we have a few questions coming in now. So the first question is from Courtney Lafferty. Her question is, you mentioned that Geocortex built you a workflow. How did you go about seeking help and getting the workflow created?
So that was all part of the implementation process where we had specified some needs. Hey, our users need to generate these kinds of permits. This is what we need to happen. Basically, the end product. This is the end product we need. And so we told them what we needed at point A and point C, and they were able to fill in the gaps between at point B, basically. And then they created these workflows for us based on those requirements.
Great, thanks. Next question is from James Schwartz. The question is, for the building permitting, do you handle inspections on the construction site?
That just depends on, okay, so one thing I didn't clarify is that these are only for in the county. So these inspections or these permits are not for within cities. The cities do their own. So I believe only commercial buildings require like a fire inspection, and the fire marshal's office handles that. And we've had some reorganization. The planning department used to be in a public works. They've been brought under the fire marshal's office in order to unify those different inspections and different permits that need to happen at the commercial level, the residential level. And so we're not there yet, just because this is a new process for us, but we will be integrating that part. Right now, it only exists as a check mark. I'll go back to one of these permits real quick. I'm just going to hit edit permit so you could see here on our panel on the left. I'll scroll down, and when certain things are required, they'll just have a true/false check mark here. Does the foundation need to be inspected? Is a fire permit required? So that's where it's handled right now. But hopefully in the future we'll have some triggers that say, hey, this is a commercial building. You need to have these things happen.
Great, thanks. Next question is from Nick Francino. His question is, do you use third-party software for the permits, like EnterGov or otherwise, or is it basically what you showed with the GIS layer and database tied to some PDFs?
So yes, there's no Geocortex basically is the third-party software for us. We host some feature services. And this application, the feature services and the tables exist in SQL, and this application edits that and adds to it, and et cetera, et cetera. What was the second part of that question?
The second part was...
no, that's it. You got it. You got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, next question is from Michael Wallace. His question is, are you viewing a georeferenced image in the view you were showing earlier, or is this just an image viewed in a different panel?
He might have been. So the base map layers we have are Esri based. I'll zoom in real quick, and he might have been asking about pictometry too, but we use Esri's light gray layer. Here, I'm gonna turn off cities real quick. We use, and this is all done through the Essentials site. We have our own aerials. These are just orthos that we purchase through locally, and then we've got an open street map that we use, and then another 1958 aerials that we've georeferenced ourselves here. So this one we did ourselves. The other aerials, orthos, we purchased. And if it's not that, then it's Esri base maps we bring into Geocortex. Yeah, it's pretty easy. We just grab the link and add it to the site builder. For the other thing you might have been asking for, we use pictometry. I can't remember the company's name, but actually it's pictometry. And that's what you see on this bottom panel here. And with a subscription to them, we request basically an API and a token that we then edit and add to our on the back end in the root folder. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, looks like we have time for one more question, and I know there are a few, so we'll follow up with the rest of you afterwards. But the last question is from Chad Phelan. His question is, how do you keep data in sync between your production site and the sandbox site?
So as far as data goes, whenever we need to copy stuff over, we can do that from one feature server, one feature class, and we'll just copy it into the next feature class. But as far as data goes for the sandbox side, we did an original dump of what we had at the time, and then we just adding in data afterwards, and we're not worried about keeping that up to date. It's more about testing the workflows. When it comes to the workflows themselves, what we did at a certain point of time is we copied the production site over as a sandbox site. We changed the data sources again, so we wouldn't be overwriting anything. And then as we add something new, like for example this report that I built, what we have to do is just add the report to the sandbox site, and then go in and add the report to the production site as well, just to keep things consistent and without having to copy things over. Because once you copy something over, you have to change a lot of the data sources, and it just becomes a lot easier to just add the button in the production site, test it in the sandbox site, and then add it again on the production site.
Great. Thank you so much, Aldo. We really appreciate your time, and it's really exciting to see what you've been able to accomplish in 6 short months, and we'll have to check back with you to see where you're at in another 6 months.
Of course.
And I know, like Courtney's question there, I think it's an important thing to note that whether you're at the beginning of your implementation of Geocortex, like Aldo and his group was, or you've been a customer for a while, we're always happy to help build the things that you need to get work done. So reach out to your account manager. We have a wonderful professional services group that works on projects like this to get customers up and running or add new functionality in. And so that's absolutely a conversation that we can have, and we were happy to help Aldo and his team with that. So thank you once more, Aldo. So we'll move on now to the last part of our show and tell today, and this is the part where we are asking for some audience participation. So please don't be shy. We really want to facilitate, John and Matt and Patrick, to facilitate a good conversation about the impacts of COVID-19 on GIS departments. I think we're curious to understand what's going on out in the world and for our customers. And I think it's also just, on the personal side, a great opportunity to maybe commiserate a little bit about some of the challenges that you're facing and work together to find the solutions, or just support each other through this really weird time. And every jurisdiction's a little bit different, and I think it's great to have sort of a community of professionals that are all working on the same things to be able to navigate this. So do please, you have the ability to unmute yourselves, work with Jon and Matt and Patrick, and let's see if we can support each other and share some information through the next 15, 20 minutes. Over to you, Matt.
Sure. Do you want me to? I'll do a quick intro and then I'll pass it to you, Jon. I think John's going to kick it off. I mean, Jon Brooks, our CEO, and I'm Matt Valiant here. I'm the Northwest account manager, and then we have Patrick here from the technical side of things. And like Lisa said, we want to get your feedback, right? We've got, Jon will talk a bit about the considerations for returning to the office and kind of solicit some feedback there. And then, what are some of the impacts on the GIS department? We have some questions there and stuff. So, we want to figure out how we can best serve you and help you through this time. So, Jon, I'll pass it on over to you to add anything and jump right in.
Thanks, Matt, and hello, everyone. First of all, I'm Jon Brooks. I'm the person responsible for the VertiGIS businesses, the operations here in North America. And I want to add my thanks to Jeff and Aldo for fascinating presentations. I can't tell you how rewarding it is for the team here to see the technology that they've created being put to work. So many thanks for that. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we are planning to return to the office. We've been looking at this in some depth, as I guess all of you have been too. We found it really quite seamlessly to move to working from home, and we do have been in close contact with everyone. We've increased the amount of communication specifically to compensate for not being in the office, not being around the water cooler, and we use various tools like Yammer and things to replace those conversations and some more formal ones. But some of the considerations that we've been thinking about here, you can see, and this is only a sample of the sort of areas that we've looked at. The list is way longer than this. So we started to look at how we could accommodate people back in the office. And one of the things we did was to survey everyone to ask whether they wanted to come back into the office at this stage, because we're not yet at the point where we've got treatments or vaccines or anything. So we actually asked everyone whether they wanted to come back into the office, and we only had about 5 or 6% that were struggling with concentration at home because of young children and not having separate rooms for offices and things. But strangely, the biggest issue we found, which is actually staff comfort on here, they don't have the right chairs. And they don't have screens at home, so we're organising a van to take them their office chairs to the homes, which will help enormously, and the screens and things like that. But in terms of the few that do want to come back into the office, obviously it's not going to be a problem for us to arrange physical distancing. We can almost give everyone an individual office. They can have meeting rooms, because of the number coming back in is likely to be probably initially 10 to 15%, but it will pick up, I guess, as time moves on. So we'll be asking people to register as they come in, signing up to not having any particular symptoms or been in contact with people with symptoms. We'll have one-way stairs. We're lucky to have stairs in and stairs out. And we'll have markers. We'll configure the office. We've got some local British Columbian type regulations to follow that we have to do. We're certainly increasing the number of times and surfaces that are cleaned in the office and sanitized. We had originally some significant problems getting hold of sanitizer, and masks and things are available. The sanitizer, we can get the initial supply, but we have to be sure that we can get ongoing supplies before we can bring people back. We have to think about restrooms and areas like that, showers, whether we can use common areas like kitchens, whether people can use, you know, one-off taps and things of that sort of nature. Certainly we don't want to use the seating areas that we have, and so we'll have to take some things off, and we'll have to know how we trace people if we do get any sort of case reported in the office or suspected case at this stage. So I'm sure you've been going through the same sort of considerations, and I say there's a lot more individual items than this to pick our way through. We actually have a 15-page plan for getting everyone in. But I wanted to just try and find out, have you had the same issues? Do you consider, you know, people on public transport? We've talked to people who want to map out where their staff are, whether they're affected, not affected, and whether they've had COVID, haven't had COVID. And so there are various requests we've been getting for help in that area. But I think it'd be interesting to find out how COVID's affected you. So over to you, Matt, if you want to pick up from there.
Sure. Thanks, John. I should have also mentioned off the top, thanks, Jeff, and although it's been great, the first two webinars have been seeing some great customer examples and more to come next week. So thanks again, guys. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you know, I'm an account manager here, so I'm chatting with our customers a lot. I'm hearing lots of different things about how COVID is impacting GIS department, from sort of very minimally to very significantly. So like John said, it's a few questions we want to ask, and hopefully folks will participate and offer some thoughts, because, you know, the goal here is how do we best support you moving forward, because we're in a new reality here. So, you know, a few of the questions we want to ask. So, you know, how priorities shifted. I heard some stories of kind of some apps that were needed and tools spun up kind of early on with the response. And then are you being tasked with projects related to returning to business? So I know there's a few things here. I know I was chatting with a couple folks from the city of Colorado Springs. So you guys had a couple things you guys were working on. Bootsy, Andrew, I don't know if you guys want to share any of the priorities that have shifted, or some of those projects you guys have been working on around in COVID. I think everyone should be able to unmute, right? Lisa?
Yeah. Hi, this is Bootsy. Yeah, specifically, we don't have anything that is directly, you know, tied to the department as a whole. Most of the things that we've been working on have been directly tied to support for the you know, city response and regional response and stuff like that to the, you know, COVID-19 stuff. We have implemented some things, you know, for return to the office, including, you know, having records of the temperature scans and things like that, and tracking, you know, who's coming into the department, so we can do proper contact tracing and things if it, you know, becomes necessary.
Right.
But not in the sense of, you know, using or doing anything specifically in regards to using GIS or anything like that to.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it kind of differs, right? Depending, I know, like, you know, folks I've been talking with, sort of city and county responses are different. I know the counties seem to be, at least in my experience, having a bit more kind of on their plates. Was there anyone else with sort of priority shifting or anything that you guys are working on related to getting back to kind of regular business or regular-ish business? Anyone else have anything to offer, maybe from kind of the county or state level potentially, or private sector? I don't, you know.
This is Nick from the County of Los Angeles.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, so yeah, we have real big budget issues. So right, the county had big cash reserves. Those reserves are gone. They're looking at all kinds of things for all the departments. Of course, we're a huge county and stuff. But one of the things that we did is we're working with our CEO group managing leases. So what happens is as more departments are figuring out if people can telework, and it's not in a lot of places. We still have to have our health workers. We still have to have a lot of stuff. But they're trying to figure that out. So they had us do some apps and create some data for them that they were always managing like in spreadsheets and stuff like that. So we did turn that into some GIS work to help them save money. So hopefully that'll help. My department, for example, our GIS group and our IT group, our lease is going to go away. They're going to get rid of us and put us with everybody else. And we're going to mostly work from home. So like 8 workspaces to 3 workspaces, and then we'll be like in this hoteling mode from that. They're going to get rid of our public counter. I work for the planning department. So they're probably going to get rid of our public counter and let people go to remote field offices, which is, I work for basically unincorporated county areas, which is split all over the place in our county. Yeah. And so during COVID, we had like a 500% increase in online applications being submitted. So with our Geocortex apps we have and with the other third-party software that we use for our permitting, we've had such a big increase in that. So that's a good thing. Those are things that hopefully we want people to do online permitting. We want people to not have to drive in to get their stuff done. So with all of that, that has been a good thing, right? So for us, it's a lot more remote work. We've told them that remote GIS could be done remotely anyway, but that's kind of some of the shift that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing, Nick. I know. Yeah. I think working from home is going to be more of a norm than an exception moving forward. So, is someone else about to jump in there?
Yeah, this is Brendan from Fairfax County, and Nick, I haven't forgot you. I will get back to you, but we are exactly like LA County in this respect too, in that we are closing our customer service walk-in counter and doing that, probably heading toward the hoteling concept. So all of our online apps, everything that people would have walked in for, we're trying to put in an application in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so we're also trying to, continue to reduce our footprint on things that might require somebody to go to a particular place or troubleshoot something. So very, very similar.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear kind of how everyone's dealing with it. Anyone kind of, seems consistent across the country? Anyone between Fairfax County and LA have any input on anything? Is it kind of similar things you guys are hearing in terms of budgets and projects and work and stuff? How about staffing?
It's Aldo here again from Denton County.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, sorry. We were all sent home as a whole department. We're part of the IT group, and except for desktop folks that have slowly returned to work, the GIS folks have been at home since March. And as far as projects go, we've been some weeks I've spent 100% of my time, if not more, on COVID-related stuff for assisting public health on visualizations, creating dashboards. We've got a hub set up. And so that's where all of our time is spent. As far as how we are changing stuff in the future, we're still up in the air. We're slowly returning to work. So that's our county owns a lot of their buildings, and since we've had huge growth, they've been instead of leasing, they've been building up stuff. So it could save more instead of having to build new buildings for growing teams. It would be beneficial for some of us to stay at home, especially for GIS that can do a lot of their work at home.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I was thinking now with our last 5 minutes, I know Patrick Fingler. Patrick, you have spun up a really great proof of concept application that maybe we'd have you demo over the next few minutes as we close up here. As I am, we're kind of hearing that some of you are actually building applications and having to sort of respond to those those requests that are coming from throughout your organizations. And I think Patrick might have something that could be useful.
You read my mind, Lisa. I think, yeah, Patrick, that'd be great to whip that up and show folks. I think,
Sure,
it applies to pretty much everything we've sort of talked about and what folks have mentioned in sort of terms of tracking things, right? This is specific to kind of employees in an organization, but I mean, this could be applied to sort of anything. So yeah, why don't you, Shane, if you want to kick him over, there we go.
Great. Just want to confirm you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my name is Patrick Fingler. I work on our technical sales team here at Geocortex, and a lot of my job is building proof of concepts for organizations that want to get more value out of their current Geocortex software, or net new customers who are interested in Geocortex, and they want to learn about what it's all about. And over the course of this pandemic, I've personally seen a lot of requests coming in regards to, can you use Geocortex to build dashboards? It's kind of like the new craze is, being able to quickly whip up an application that has some key performance indicators to, highlight some information on the fly that's easy for just the general public or staff to interpret. So what we're looking at here is a Geocortex web application that I put together for an organization that essentially had to monitor all of their different offices throughout the United States. Now, this is some dummy data I put together as this is a little bit secure data. But essentially they have a number of offices throughout the United States, and they needed to be able to monitor, which departments, and within those departments, which employees or how many employees have been infected by COVID, how many are quarantined, which ones have actually been able to return to work in the field, and which infected ones have also been able to return to the office, and so on. So what we built for them is this kind of filter workflow that allows them to pan between each of their office locations, and then they can also filter the individual departments within those locations. So as I pan to New York, you can see the KPI charts are being indicated, along with the results table here at the bottom is showing all the New York departments and the infected, recovered, quarantined, and returned case rates for those. If I navigate to Los Angeles, for example, you'll see that's now changed to Los Angeles, and the underlying KPI indicators have been updated. And similarly, if they want to search at a department level as well, they can see, how many employees have been infected in the engineering or planning department, and so on. What they also needed, though, was an ability to update this information as well. I'm just going to reset my filter here and open up this workflow here, which allows me to select an individual location, like let's navigate to Washington, and then select the particular department within Washington, for example, customer operations, and we can update the underlying infected, recovered, etc. numbers. So typically every week they're receiving a spreadsheet with these new updates, and they needed a way to implement that in a fast manner to update their underlying dashboard. So here we could say that, now there's only 20 infected, there's 43 that have been recovered, still there's 398 that have been quarantined, and there's 365 or something like that have been returned to work. We can update that. We'll get a little alert saying that it's been updated, and here you can see now that our KPI indicators have also been updated. So that's a neat little solution that we put together for this organization. One other thing I just wanted to also highlight, let me just reset my extent here and the underlying KPI charts, is that a lot of these dashboards also, organizations need the ability, to update these dashboards as they're panning around the map. So what you can do actually using Geocortex Web, here I'm in the configuration interface for Web, you can see there's this map component, and within this map component, this is essentially where it's just logging me into my ArcGIS Online account here. This is where you choose the underlying web map that you want to reference. And within here, there's these events that are available.
And there's a variety of different events that you can connect workflows to. So here we've got a mapped clicked event and map initialized event, so you can run like a startup workflow when the map initializes. Then there's also a map viewpoint changed event. So what you can actually do is you can add any kind of out-of-the-box command or a specific workflow. Here I'm just going to select a workflow that essentially queries all of the features within the extent every time I pan the map. So now when I zoom into like Miami, we should see that the underlying KPI cards and results are being filtered on the map to only show Miami features and so on. If I was to zoom out again, they're going to be updated on the fly as well. So that's a neat way that you can use Geocortex Web and the built-in kind of event components to tie your workflows to create, you know, some really powerful applications for your COVID response, or, you know, in general, any type of applications that you might need to, yeah, better help prepare your employees to navigate back to work.
Thanks so much, Patrick. That's great. Such good work that you do. All right, so that is time today. I did want to thank you all again for attending, and a really good segue from Patrick is Patrick's proof of concept is built on Geocortex Web. And next week, members of our product team will be hosting their session on the transition from the Geocortex viewer from HTML5 to Geocortex Web. And I know a lot of people have had questions about that ever since we announced the launch of Geocortex Web last year. Very beginnings of that conversation will be started next week. So we hope you'll tune into that. We also have one of our customers from the Pacific Northwest showing an application that they've built for short-term rental permitting. So for all of you facing the Airbnb issue and regulations and things like that, super interesting opportunity to learn a bit more there. So next Thursday, June 18th, we hope that you will join us again. And if you do feel like you want to show your application in the fall, let me know. I'll be happy to schedule you in. Aldo, Jeff, thank you so much. John, Matt, Patrick, thank you so much, everyone. We will follow up on any questions we didn't get to today via email shortly. Take care, stay well, see you next week.